Welcome into the Commander's Report. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today, we're going to be discussing and breaking down the 5 biggest reasons, in my opinion, that the Washington Commanders failed this season. And then, well, kind of the reason why we're talking about this today, guys, is not to just, bitch and moan and complain, but to also learn some lessons from what this past offseason was for the Washington Commanders, where things went wrong during the season, and how this front office and this coaching staff can do better heading into the 2026 and beyond. Now, before we get into the video today, kick us off down there in the comment section, but letting me know what you think the biggest reason for Washington's collapse this season is. Is it because of the front office? Is it because of the coaching staff? Is it something else? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. What was the biggest reason that led to Washington's collapse this year? So now let's get into my first reason here, which is that I think this team spent more on picks instead of spending money to get veteran players, okay? And what I mean by that is they sent more draft capital away than they probably should have, and they didn't spend nearly enough money on players in free agency. They left a lot of money on the table, and they have sent a lot of this team's future to other teams in exchange for veteran players. Washington had over $100 million to spend heading into the offseason, and that was to spend on veteran players via free agency, obviously trades, and they had a really great opportunity this past year to upgrade this roster after an NFC Championship game berth, and I personally was so excited to see what this team was going to do. And, the guys that they added, frankly, it was just a really underwhelming haul, in my opinion. Now, obviously, you add some really good players like Laremy Tunsil, for example, and I thought Deatrich Wise was playing pretty well before he got injured, and Javon Kinlaw has been pretty decent, but, they didn't really spend a whole bunch of that $100+ million on players this year. They only spent on these 10 players right here about $65 million of that over $100 million that they could have spent, and I definitely think they left some money out on the table to potentially go get some better players. All right, I certainly think they could have got a better safety than Will Harris. I think they could have gotten an upgrade at inside linebacker instead of bringing back Bobby Wagner, for example. I think that there was opportunities there to spend a little bit more money, but to make this team better than it ended up being, and obviously a Monday morning quarterbacking here on that. But, right now, even to this day, Washington has the second most cap space in the league. And in a win-now season with a quarterback on a rookie contract, you would think that they would want to spend more of those cap resources on veteran players and better veteran players than they ended up bringing in to try and maximize this roster this year. And unfortunately, that just didn't happen. And instead, they sent away multiple high draft picks away to other teams to bring in veteran players like Marshon Lattimore at the trade deadline last year, Deebo Samuel in a trade at the NFL Combine this year, and then Laremy Tunsil during NFL free agency. And listen, man, Laremy Tunsil in particular has been a pretty solid player this year, but the amount of draft picks that they spent to go get him, I think was probably a bad decision by Adam Peters, to say the least, because even when you offset the certain picks and all that different stuff that you got back in these deals, you still gave up 2 third-round draft picks. You gave up a 6th and a 7th in last year's NFL draft, and you're giving away a 2nd and a 4th-round draft pick in 2026. I mean, just on these picks alone, you expect probably 4 of these picks to be future starters for your team that now the Washington Commanders cannot draft because of the moves that they made to go get veteran players, when they could have just saved these draft picks and spent more money in free agency, for example, on higher level free agents. But instead they made these trades, and now the cupboard is pretty darn barren when it comes to your draft capital heading into 2026. And pretty much what Peters did, and what his big mistake was, in my opinion, in his team building over the last year and a half, is that he mortgaged this team's future in order to go get veteran talent to help them win now, when he could have just as easily got similar to higher level veteran talent on the free agency market with the money that he had at his disposal. So it was a really foolish way, in my opinion, to build this roster in a win now capacity, because now you only have 2 picks in the top 100 of next year's NFL draft and only 2 picks in the first 4 rounds, which is really where you expect to draft your starters. So now you're in a position where the Commanders are likely going to be trading down in the first round just to get some more draft picks. And, that's not a position that we had to be in. I mean, if you just go out and use that money in free agency to get some higher level veteran talent instead of using those draft picks, this team would be in a pretty decent spot to inject this team next offseason with some young, up-and-coming rookie talent. But now that's not really the case unless you trade down or you trade veteran players this offseason in order to accomplish that. And then another way that I think that this team went wrong, specifically in the team-building phase in the offseason, was that they put too much faith in cooked veterans, older players that were clearly declining physically, and they were showing signs of it last year. And, what the mindset should have been going into this year is we got all this cap space. We're looking at, adding lots of really good veteran talent to this team that already made the NFC Championship game. And even though we made that NFC Championship game, there's still multiple areas on this team that need to be really upgraded. And we can use that lots of cap space at our disposal in order to bring in lots of good veteran talent and help us, take this team to the next level. But instead, what their mindset actually was, oh, we made the NFC Championship game last year. That means we're just good, we're just fine the way that we are. So we're going to bring back a bunch of our older veterans. We're going to play a bunch of different players that are ancient. We're going to have the oldest team in the oldest roster in the entire National Football League. And, this team has been filled with disappointing, aging veterans that just don't have it anymore. Bobby Wagner, even last year, was showing signs of decline, but this year has really taken it and ramped it up to 11. He just is unplayable at this point in his NFL career. Frankie Louvu, I understand, why, of course, they signed him to a multi-year contract, but he's been disappointing this year because he was arguably an all-pro caliber player for this defense last year, and this year he's having a hard time making tackles out in space. He's not very good in pass coverage, and he's just been super disappointing. Marshon Lattimore, obviously, was expected to be this team's number one corner this year. Definitely didn't pan out that way. Von Miller, who they brought in late, certainly hasn't lived up to, the star status that, that he previously was at earlier on in his career. And then Zach Ertz, who they brought back after having a one-year contract with him last year, just hasn't really had the same level of production. And, he's certainly getting older as well, and he was even declining last year because of age. And, right now, the result is that the Commanders have currently assembled the oldest roster in the National Football League. And let me tell you guys, it shows on film. This defense is slow as hell. This offense is slow as hell. All right. And a big reason for that is you got all these older players on the roster that just don't have it anymore. And the Commanders put way too much faith in these older players that they were going to either maintain or elevate their play from last year when, the smart GM and the smart head coach would have realized that these players were likely on the decline and they probably should have been replaced. And even worse, they let good players in free agency leave this offseason, all right? Like, not only did they bring back defective players to this roster this year, but they let go of players that were very, very productive for this team just last season. Dante Fowler Jr., your team's leader in sacks. See you later. You can go to the Cowboys. And then Jeremy Chin goes to the Raiders. He was a big part of this defense as that bandit safety that is so important to the Joe Witt, Dan Quinn style of defense. They just let him walk. You easily could have afforded to bring him back. Jonathan Allen, of course, I think Allen probably wanted out because he wanted a new deal, and the Commanders weren't willing to give him that. But, he was a productive player in this defense that just leaves. And then you got Brian Robinson Jr., who you trade away. Alameda Zaccheaus. I mean, the Bears and their fans right now are calling him Zaccheaus because he's playing so good, and he's playing so good after the catch this year. Zaccheaus was one of your more productive players in this offense last year, and you don't bring him back for the low price that the Bears ended up bringing him in for. I just don't understand that one. And the De'Ami Brown was playing great down the stretch for this Commanders offense last year. I mean, having either Zaccheaus or Brown, let alone both of them in this offense this year, would have done wonders when Terry McLaurin eventually went down with his injury. But we'll talk about that here soon. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Grade Adam Peters' performance in the 2025 offseason this year. Give me an A, B, C, D, or F. After, watching it, looking back at it with 2020 hindsight, I would have to say D. I mean, like, you had a team with a bunch of cap space and a rookie quarterback that was a budding superstar and all this different stuff, and he kind of butchered it, man. I can't lie. I got to give it a D. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. In just a second here, I'm going to let you know about our sponsor today at Harry's, and while I tell you about Harry's, Let me know down there in the comment section your grade for Adam Peters this offseason. Now, with that, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Harry's. And I don't have to tell you guys that maneuvering the men's razor space right now is an absolute nightmare. The quality products are always super expensive, and refills for those products are always ridiculously expensive as well. Then when you try and save a little bit of money and you go with one of the cheaper brands, you get stuck with dull razors that you can really only use once, and they irritate or even cut your skin. That's exactly why I switched to Harry's Plus, and I haven't looked back since. Harry's Plus has an advanced pivoting system to reach every corner of your face, refined blade tech for a closer, smoother shave, and a weighted metal handle, which is Harry's heaviest handle ever in any other products for added control and comfort. But I think the best part about Harry's Plus is how affordable it is. Harry's owns their own world-class blade factory in Germany, which means no outsourcing and no middlemen. And because they control the entire process from steel to shelf, they keep costs low and pass the savings on to you, the customer. And if you don't love your shave from Harry's is going to make it right with you. No questions asked. Their risk-free trial means there's zero downside to giving them a shot. And I actually have my Harry's Plus razor with me here today to show you guys that I actually use and love this product. And I've been using Harry's products ever since I was in college, when, obviously college people just don't have money to spend on stuff, especially, spending hundreds of dollars on shaving products. But I also didn't love using the cheap products that would irritate, and redden and even cut my skin. But then I found Harry's, and, I was really drawn to it with the price point, but then, all their products, their shave gel, their post-shave balm, of course, their razors, it's all really high quality stuff. And because they control the entire process, they're able to keep costs low for you guys. And I wanted to pass the savings on to you right now. So for a limited time only, our listeners can get the Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/chat. This set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, one refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shave gel, and a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head on over to harrys.com/chat to claim this offer, and after your purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. A big thank you to Harry's for sponsoring today's edition of the Commanders Report. The next reason where I think it went wrong for the Commanders this season is that they went into the season being too Terry McLaurin dependent on offense. And, part of it is not bringing back Olamide Zaccheaus and De'Ami Brown, two very suitable wide receivers for this offense that played very well for this team down the stretch. But, it certainly created an environment where Terry was the most irreplaceable player on this offense. And then when he had to miss significant time with a quad/groin type of injury this year, he's still dealing with that injury as we speak right now. You just didn't have any vertical threats that you could trust in this offense. And because of that, defenses couldn't respect and chose not to respect this Commanders passing attack, and for good reason, which allowed them to put extra people in the box, stop the run game, and completely grind this Washington offense, even with Jaden Daniels in it, to a complete halt this season. And, first of all, you take forever to get the extension done, which takes away his practice time with Jaden Daniels in training camp and in the preseason, which led to a slow start for Terry McLaurin. Then Jaden gets injured. Then Terry gets injured. And those two haven't seen the field since week 2 when we played the Green Bay Packers. And without Terry McLaurin in the lineup, nobody in the National Football League that this team has played, especially over this last 6-game skid, nobody respects this passing attack, all right? Because you're throwing guys out there like Robbie Chosen and Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane and Treylon Burks and Deebo Samuel. For as much as I like Deebo as a gadget piece, somebody that, is a good run-after guy, really good screen threat, all that different stuff, he's not a route runner. He's not somebody that's going to route somebody up in man coverage, and he's not someone that's going to separate vertically down the field either. So teams weren't scared of him either. So there's just nobody that could take the top off the defense reliably. There's nobody that could really, gain that respect from opposing defenses enough to open up the rest of the game. The quick passing game, the running game, everything has just been completely shut down because Terry McLaurin is not in this lineup, and that is at least partially at the fault of Dan Quinn and Adam Peters for constructing this team to be extremely Terry McLaurin dependent heading into this season. Now, what this team needs moving forward is they have to find a legitimate wide receiver 2 that can be a interim wide receiver 1 and, command the respect of opposing defenses, when and if Terry McLaurin gets injured. Deebo Samuel was not fitting that bill this year, and he never was, all right? So you got to find somebody, whether it's a younger receiver in the draft next year or whether that's a free agent that you get and bring in here. You need somebody that's a good route runner, somebody that can vertically take the top off the defense the way Terry McLaurin can, because if he goes down next year, you need to have a better plan than Deebo Samuel and a bunch of nobodies. Then another thing another way that I think this season went wrong is that the coaching staff played guys out of position, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. I actually think Cliff Kingsbury has done a pretty decent job with the offense, given the pieces that he's had and the injuries that have happened on the offensive side of the ball this year. But on defense, they played Mike Sainristil at slot corner. They played Quan Martin at free safety, and they played Frankie Louvu at off-ball linebacker. And in many respects here for Quan and Louvu, they're still playing them in the wrong position. Sainristil should be an outside corner, which he is now because of injuries. It's out of necessity, not because this coaching staff wised up. Quan Martin should be a slot corner, not a safety. And then Frankie Louvu should be an edge rusher. But this coaching staff doesn't want to figure that out. And listen, man, when you look at the terrible pass defense of the Washington Commanders this year, I think you can really boil it down to two things. Number one, playing players at linebacker and in the secondary that were way past their prime and aren't good players anymore. Look at Marshon Lattimore, Bobby Wagner, for examples there, but also Frankie Louvu fits in that one. And also playing younger players in unideal spots for their skill sets. All right, Mike Sainristil, I think, is proven beyond a doubt here that he is a better outside corner than a slot guy. And Quan Martin, who played slot corner in college, they are playing him at safety, and he has been one of the worst safeties in the entire National Football League. All right, so they're playing guys out of position. They're playing older veterans that have aged poorly, and it has kind of combined here to create one of the worst, if not the worst, passing defenses in the National Football League. And really the only player that has worked in the secondary this year for the Washington Commanders has been Trey Amos, the rookie out of Ole Miss. At least they got that pick right, bringing in Amos from Ole Miss, who has been terrific this year. He looks like your future number one cornerback, and now that Sainristil is finally playing on the outside, and he's playing well. Hopefully that can be the outside cornerback duo for the team heading into the future, and you don't have to worry about that heading into 2026. But then the final thing where it goes wrong, and we do have to talk about it, guys. This has been the season from hell when it comes to injuries and injuries to key players for the Washington Commanders this year. And you just can't talk about the story of what went wrong with this football team this year without talking about the really bad luck that they had on the injury front. I mean, there's a reason why this team, started 3-2, and they did have some injuries during that 3-2 start, and they were not a perfect football team during those first 5 games. So there's a reason why they have played exponentially worse over these last 6 games and have lost every single game along over the last month and a half, and that reason is because of the injuries, all right, and injuries to really key players, all right. Marshon Lattimore out for the season. These are just the season-ending injuries right here, guys, all right. Both of your starting outside cornerbacks, both of your starting defensive ends, all right. Your replacement defensive end, and Javontae Jean-Baptiste, one of your starting running backs in Austin Ekeler, and then your starting kick returner in Luke McCaffrey, who is also starting to show signs of positivity as a receiver, all right? And 5 of these injuries happened after the 3-2 start, all right? So that certainly shows quite a bit. But then how about the non-season-ending injuries, all right? There's been plenty of those as well, all right? 2 starting wide receivers in Noah Brown and Terry McLaurin, not to mention Deebo's missed a game, all right? You have Will Harris, who has missed 8 games to this point at safety. Sam Cosmi missed the first 6 games of the year. Your starting right guard, Jaden Daniels, your starting quarterback, it has missed 5 games to this point and is likely to miss more. Jonathan Jones was on IR with a hamstring injury, and John Bates had to miss a couple of games. So when you combine all of these major injuries to such important starting players on this team, you kind of see that this team was not built to handle this many injuries, and frankly, not many teams in the National Football League are. And I really do think that if this team would have stayed, somewhat healthy, you can't expect to be fully healthy the entire season, but if it would have been similar to like last year where they really didn't suffer that many injuries, then, I think this team would be around 500. I don't think they'd be a great team, all right? And they might even have a losing record at this point, but they wouldn't have lost 6 games in a row, all right? I think the reason why this team has completely collapsed and why they've lost 6 games in a row and why they're one of the worst teams in football right now is because they've had as many season-ending and as many short-term injuries as they have had to key players, and you just can't ignore that fact. There's been more that has gone into this collapse than injuries, but injuries have certainly played a key factor. So now, moving forward, all right, because, it's one thing to be able to identify a problem and understand where things went wrong, but it's another thing to learn lessons from what you did wrong and translate that to success in the future. And all Dan Quinn and Adam Peters can do at this point, they've already wasted this season. All they can do is learn from their mistakes that they made during the 2025 offseason, and hopefully they can bring those lessons to 2026 to build a team that can actually compete at a high level. And these are the 4 lessons that they should have learned. Number 1, spend your money if you have a lot of money, not draft picks for veteran players. That's a stupid strategy, all right? We learned that. Also, trade some of your aging veterans for draft picks. I think that's a really good strategy. If Deron Payne wants a brand new contract this offseason, trade him for a day 2 pick, all right? If Laramie Tunsil maybe wants a new huge contract, maybe you trade him to get some of your picks back that you traded away for him, right? You think about some of these opportunities. Trade Frankie Louvu away if somebody wants him. Same thing with Quan Martin. You can also get a legitimate wide receiver too, all right? I don't know what that looks like exactly, whether you trade for one, whether you get one in free agency, or whether you draft one. Ideally, you draft one of them, draft a young wide receiver that can be your future at number 1 to kind of be Terry McLaurin's number 2 for the time being, and that would probably be the way I would handle that situation. And then you play guys where they should. Mike Samerstill, keep him on the outside. If you keep Quan Martin, keep him at slot corner where he has played his best ball throughout his football life. All right, Frankie Louvu, if you keep him, play him at edge rusher. Don't play him at off-ball linebacker where he sucks in pass coverage and can't make open field tackles. All right, play your guys where they should be playing. And if Washington can do those 4 things, and if they have learned these 4 lessons heading into the 2026 offseason, I think this team can absolutely get back to their winning ways next season. And I really do believe that this team is one good offseason away from getting back to where they were in 2024, which is a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Do you trust this front office to get it right here in 2026? By the way, I completely understand if your answer to this question is no after the way they completely butchered it this offseason, but we try to keep things optimistic and hopeful here on this show. So at least for now, I'm going to hope that Dan Quinn and Adam Peters have learned their lesson, and I'm going to answer yes to this question. Appreciate all of you guys for stopping by here today for today's show. We're going to have more Commanders content coming your way throughout the week as we prepare for the bye week this week, and then, of course, Sunday Night Football in Week 13 versus the Denver Broncos. Really do appreciate all of your guys' support. I'll see you guys next time, and until then, go raise some hail.